What if I told you there's a technique that can transform any fear into absolute courage in under 5 minutes? Would you use it? Louise Hay discovered this secret when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, facing only 2 options: die in fear or live with courage. And today, you'll learn exactly how she made that transformation. Have you ever noticed how fear controls your life without you even realizing it? How it whispers in your ear, "Don't try that. It might go wrong. Don't take risks. You'll get hurt. Don't change anything. It's better to stay in your comfort zone." And you obey. You shrink. You choose false security over real life. I know what it's like to live like this, because I, too, have been a prisoner of my own fears. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of rejection. Fear of failure. Fear of success. Fear of being seen. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of loving. Fear of being alone. And the worst part is, you know you're wasting your life. You know there's a courageous version of yourself waiting to be born. A version that makes the right decisions, that goes after her dreams, that says no when she needs to say no, and yes when she needs to say yes. But that version is buried under layers and layers of fear. Louise Hay knew this prison better than anyone. She spent her entire childhood consumed by fear. Fear of her abusive stepfather. Fear of her mother, who didn't protect her. Fear of the neighbors who abused her. Fear of the poverty that surrounded her family. Fear of having no future, no worth, no hope. As she grew older, the fears simply changed form. Fear of relationships, because every man in her life had hurt her. Fear of success, because she didn't think she deserved it. Fear of judgment. Fear of being who she truly was. Fear of shining, because it would attract too much attention. She lived a small life, controlled by fear. Until at 50, she received the diagnosis that changed everything: cervical cancer with metastasis. The doctors were blunt. She had only a few months to live. And it was at that moment that Louise realized something revolutionary. The cancer was in the same place where she had been assaulted as a child. Her body was literally being consumed by the fear she had carried. For decades, she understood she had 2 choices: die as a victim of her fears, or live as the master of her own courage. Louise chose courage. And that's when she discovered what she called the alchemy of fear, a technique to transform the energy of fear into fuel for courage. A method so powerful that it not only cured her cancer, but transformed her into one of the most courageous and influential women in the world. Her discovery was simple, yet revolutionary. Fear and courage are made of the same energy. The difference lies only in the direction. Fear is contracted energy, turned inward, focused on what can go wrong. Courage is that same energy expanded, turned outward, focused on what can go right. Louise realized that when you feel fear, you're actually feeling power. Pure power, vital energy, life force trying to move through you. The problem is that most people interpret this energy as a sign of danger, and then they contract, retreat, hide. But Louise discovered that if you can change the interpretation, you can completely change the experience. Instead of interpreting that feeling as something terrible is going to happen, you can interpret it as something incredible is about to be born through me. Her technique worked like this. Every time she felt fear, instead of running away, she would take a deep breath and say, "I acknowledge that I am feeling power trying to move through me. I choose to direct this power to create something wonderful, and something magical would happen." The same energy that a second before paralyzed her now propelled her forward. What was fear transformed into excitement? What was paralysis became action? What was retreat became advancement? Louise tested this technique in every area of her life. When she felt fear of public speaking, she would take a deep breath and transform the fear into enthusiasm to share her message. When she felt afraid to write her book, she transformed the energy into passion to help other people. When she felt afraid of healing from cancer, she transformed it into fierce determination to prove that miracles are possible. She discovered that fear is just disguised love. When you're afraid of losing someone, it's because you love that person. When you're afraid of failing a project, it's because that project is important to you. When you're afraid of being rejected, it's because you value human connection. Fear always points to what matters most in your life. And it was this revelation that changed everything for Louise. She stopped seeing fear as an enemy and started seeing it as a compass, as a sign that she was going in the right direction, as evidence that she was about to grow, evolve, become a more courageous version of herself. Louise used to say, "Fear is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're about to do something important. It's your soul preparing you for a quantum leap." But she also discovered that there's a difference between real fear and imaginary fear. Real fear protects you from real dangers. If you're crossing the street and you see a car coming, fear makes you run. That fear is your friend. It keeps you alive. Imaginary fear is different. It's your mind creating dangers that don't exist. It's you imagining catastrophic scenarios that probably will never happen. It's being afraid of things that are only in your head. Louise taught that 98% of our fears are imaginary. They're mental ghosts, monsters that your own mind has created. And the proof of this is simple. How many times have you been terrified of something that never happened? How many times have you lost sleep worrying about situations that resolved themselves? She said, "Your mind is a problem-creating machine. If you don't give it real problems to solve, it will invent false problems for you to worry about." And the most incredible thing is that your mind doesn't distinguish between real and imaginary fear. For your nervous system, imagining a danger is the same as experiencing a danger. That's why your heart races when you watch a horror movie. That's why your breathing quickens when you imagine an embarrassing situation. Your body reacts as if it were real. But Louise discovered that you can use this mechanism to your advantage. If your mind doesn't distinguish between real and imaginary, you can create positive scenarios with the same intensity. You can imagine situations where you are courageous, confident, successful, and your body will react as if it were true. That's how she developed what she called the mental cinema of courage, a technique where you project onto the screen of your mind movies where you are the heroine, where you face your fears and emerge victorious, where you make brave decisions and reap wonderful results. Louise Hay did this every day. Before sleep, she created a mental movie where she saw herself healed from cancer, writing life-changing books, lecturing to thousands, living a full and happy life. And her mind began to accept these images as future reality. The result was impressive. In a few months, she not only completely cured herself of cancer, but she began to live exactly the life she had imagined. She wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life, which sold over 50 million copies. She created a publishing house that changed the lives of millions. She became one of the most respected speakers in the world. It all started when she decided to stop being afraid and start being brave. Louise Hay discovered that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling fear and acting anyway. It's acknowledging that fear is present, but not letting it make decisions for you. It's using the energy of fear as fuel for action. She used to tell a story that perfectly illustrated this. When she was starting to give lectures, she was so scared she would vomit before going on stage. But she went up anyway. And she discovered that the fear lessened as she spoke. That action dissolved the fear, not the other way round. Courage doesn't come before action, she said. Courage comes during action. You don't wait to feel brave to act. You act, and the courage appears. And that's how Louise Hay developed her master formula. Fear, plus action, for courage. Every time you feel fear and act anyway, you're training your courage. You're proving to yourself that you're stronger than any fear. Louise Hay tested this formula thousands of times. Fear of writing. The action of writing was courage to express herself. Fear of public speaking. The action of speaking was courage to share her message. Fear of healing. The action of self-care. Courage to believe in miracles. She discovered that fear is like a muscle. The more you feed it, the stronger it gets. The more you obey it, the more power it gains over you. But courage is also a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. The more you act despite fear, the braver you become. And the most incredible thing is that this happens quickly. Louise Hay said you can transform years of cowardice into genuine courage in a matter of weeks. Just start acting despite the fear. Just stop obeying the voice that tells you to stay. Small, but Louise Hay also discovered that there's a type of fear that's more dangerous than all the others. A fear that keeps you trapped forever if you don't know how to deal with it. It's the fear of being who you really are. This is the deepest fear there is. Fear of showing your true personality. Fear of expressing your real opinions. Fear of going after your true dreams. Fear of being authentic in a world that rewards those who are false. Louise Hay spent the first half of her life hiding, behind masks, trying to be who people expected her to be, trying to please everyone, trying not to bother anyone. And she almost died living that way. It was only when she decided to take off all the masks that real life began. When she decided to be exactly who she was, without apologies, without trying to please, without fear of the judgment of others. The bravest person you can be, she said, is yourself, because everyone else is already busy being someone else. Only you can be you. And it was this radical authenticity that made Louise Hay so powerful. She stopped trying to be perfect and started being real. She stopped hiding her wounds and started transforming them into wisdom. She stopped being ashamed of her past and started using it as fuel to help other people. Louise Hay discovered that when you stop being afraid of being judged, you become unstoppable. Because the judgment of others only has power over you when you also judge yourself. When you completely accept yourself, the opinions of others lose their strength. You can please some of the people all of the time, or all of the people some of the time, but you can never please all of the people all of the time, she used to say. So stop trying and start living. The specific technique that Louise Hay developed to overcome the fear of being authentic was revolutionary. She called it the absolute truth ritual. Every day she chose a situation where she was being false and decided to be completely true. If someone asked her opinion on something, she gave her real opinion, not the one she thought the person wanted to hear. If she felt like saying no to an invitation, she said no, even if it might displease. If she wanted to express a different idea, she expressed it, even at the risk of being criticized. And she discovered something incredible. People didn't move away from her because of her authenticity. On the contrary, they drew closer because authenticity is magnetic. Real people attract real people. courage inspires courage. Louise Hay realized that everyone is hungry for authenticity. In a world full of people pretending to be perfect, someone who has the courage to be real stands out like a star in the dark sky, and that's how she became one of the most loved and respected people on the planet. Not for being perfect, but for having the courage to be imperfect. Not for never being afraid, but for acting despite the fear. Not for never having suffered, but for transforming suffering into wisdom. Her message was clear. You don't have to wait for the fear to pass to start living. You can start living now, fear and all, because real life happens on the other side of fear. And there's only one way to get there, by going through it. Louise Hay always said, "Fear is the last frontier between you and the life of your dreams. And the only way to cross that frontier is by walking through it, not trying to go around it." Now I'm going to teach you the exact technique that Louise Hay used to transform fear into courage in less than 5 minutes. It's a method she tested thousands of times, and that works for any type of fear. From small, everyday fears to deep fears that control your entire life, the technique I'm going to teach you now is called instant transmutation of fear. And Louise Hay discovered this method when she was literally fighting for her life. She realized she didn't have time for years of therapy or long healing processes. She needed something that worked immediately. And she developed a protocol that transforms fear into courage in less than 5 minutes. The method has 6 steps that must be followed in exactly this sequence. Louise Hay tested hundreds of variations until she discovered this perfect formula. It works because it attacks fear on all levels: physical, emotional, mental, and energetic. First step, physical recognition of fear. Louise Hay discovered that fear is not just an emotion. It's a complete physical reaction. Your whole body changes when you feel fear. Your breath becomes shallow. Your muscles tense, your heart races, your stomach clenches, your throat tightens. Most people try to ignore these sensations or run away from them. But Louise Hay discovered that this only strengthens the fear. It's like trying to put out a fire by pretending it doesn't exist. It doesn't work. The first step is to do the opposite. Instead of running from the sensations, you go into them. You place your hand on your heart, breathe deeply, and say, "I acknowledge that I am feeling fear. I accept this sensation in my body. I am not going to run away from it." This simple act of acknowledgement begins to transform your relationship with fear. Instead of being a victim of it, you become an observer. Instead of being controlled by it, you take control. Louise Hay said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." When you stop fighting fear and begin to accept it, it loses half its power over you. Second step, expansion breathing. Louise Hay discovered that fear is always accompanied by constricted breathing. You breathe as if you're trying to hide, to protect yourself, to become invisible. And this breathing sends a signal to your brain. There is danger. Prepare to flee or fight. But you can change that signal instantly by changing the way you breathe. Louise Hay developed what she called courage breathing. It's a specific breathing technique that sends a different message to your nervous system. It works like this. You inhale deeply through your nose, counting to 4, expanding not only your chest, but your belly as well. Hold the air for 4 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth, making a long sound, counting to 8. The secret is in the sound. Louise Hay discovered that making a sound on the exhale activates the vagus nerve, which is responsible for calming the entire nervous system. It's as if you're literally singing your fear to sleep. You repeat this breathing 3 times in a row, and something incredible happens. Your body relaxes, your mind calms down, the feeling of panic diminishes drastically. It's as if you've pressed a reset button on your nervous system. 3rd step, Socratic questioning of fear. This is where Louise Hay was genius. She discovered that most fears crumble when you ask the right questions, because fear is usually based on false assumptions, catastrophic scenarios, exaggerated probabilities. Louise Hay created 5 magic questions that dissolve any fear. First question, is this fear about something that is happening now, or something that might happen in the future, or 90% of the time? You'll discover you're afraid of something that doesn't even exist yet. You're suffering in anticipation. Second question, if what I'm fearing actually happens, what is the worst thing that could happen? When you go to the end of the catastrophic scenario, you usually discover it's much less terrible than your imagination was painting. Third question, what is the real probability of this happening? Louise Hay discovered that our minds always exaggerate negative probabilities. We treat something that has a 1% chance as if it were an absolute certainty. Fourth question, if this happens, will I be able to cope? The answer is almost always yes, because you've dealt with difficult things before. You've overcome challenges that seemed impossible. You are stronger than you think. Fifth question, what good could happen if I act despite the fear? This is the question that changes everything, because it shifts your focus from what could go wrong to what could go right. Louise Hay asked these questions mentally whenever she felt fear, and most of the time, by the end of the questioning, the fear had completely dissolved, because she had exposed the lies that fear was telling. Fourth step, visualization of victorious courage. Louise Hay discovered that if your mind can create scenarios of fear so vivid that your body reacts as if they were real, you can also create scenarios of courage with the same intensity. She developed a technique she called the cinema of courage. You close your eyes and create a mental movie where you are the courageous protagonist. You see yourself facing exactly the situation that scares you, but acting with absolute courage. Louise Hay did this with cinematic detail. If she was afraid of public speaking, she saw herself on stage, confident, eloquent, connected with the audience, receiving warm applause. If she was afraid of a difficult conversation, she saw herself speaking clearly, remaining calm, reaching a positive resolution. The secret is to use all your senses in the visualization. It's not just seeing the images, it's hearing the sounds, feeling the sensations, experiencing the emotions. Louise Hay said, the more real you can make your visualization of courage, the more courage you will have in real life. And it worked, because the brain doesn't distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real experience. When you see yourself being courageous repeatedly in your mind, you are literally training your courage. You are creating memories of success before success even happens. Fifth step, affirmation of courageous identity. Louise Hay discovered that fear is always accompanied by a story about who you are. I am weak. I am incapable. I can't. I don't deserve. These stories are like programs running in the background of your mind, sabotaging your courage. But you can replace these stories with others. Louise Hay created specific affirmations that reprogram your identity from fearful to courageous. These aren't generic affirmations. They are powerful statements about who you really are. Her main affirmation was, "I am a courageous, powerful, and capable woman. I have everything I need within me to face any situation. My fear transforms into courage. My anxiety transforms into excitement. I choose to act with love instead of reacting with fear." You say this affirmation looking in the mirror, with your hands on your heart, as if you were making a sacred oath. And you repeat it until you feel the words are entering your system as if they were medicine. Louise Hay discovered that when you change the story you tell about yourself, you completely change your life experience. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, you see yourself as the creator of your reality. 6th step, immediate courageous action. This is the most important step. Louise Hay discovered that all the techniques in the world are useless if you don't act, that you can feel courageous mentally, but if you don't translate that courage into action, it dissipates. The secret is to act immediately after applying the technique. Don't wait. Don't think anymore. Don't give time for the fear to return. You apply the first 5 steps and immediately do something courageous in relation to the situation that scared you. It doesn't have to be a giant action. It can be a small step, but it needs to be a real step. If you're afraid of a difficult conversation, pick up the phone and schedule it. If you're scared to start a project, write the first line. If you're terrified of leaving a toxic relationship, make that first call to a lawyer. Louise Hay used to say, "Courage isn't a feeling, it's an action. You don't feel courageous and then act. You act and then feel courageous." And she was right. Every time you act despite fear, you're strengthening your courage muscle. You're proving to yourself that you're capable of doing things that seemed impossible. You're rewriting your personal story. From fearful to fearless, Louise Hay applied this technique thousands of times throughout her life. When she was afraid to write her first book, she applied the technique and wrote the first page. When she was afraid of public speaking, she applied it and accepted the first invitation to lecture. When she was afraid to start her publishing company, she applied it and rented the first office, and each courageous action led to the next. As if courage were contagious, even within the same person, one courageous attitude generated energy for the next courageous attitude. And so, Louise Hay built an extraordinary life, one courageous decision at a time. But Louise Hay discovered something even deeper. There's a difference between reactive courage and creative courage. Reactive courage is when you act despite fear to solve a problem or face a crisis. Creative courage is when you act despite fear to create something new, something that didn't exist before. Louise Hay realized that the most powerful courage is creative courage. It's the courage to invent a life that never existed, to become a person you've never been, to create something the world needs, but doesn't yet know. It was this creative courage that made Louise Hay write a book about self-healing at a time when no one was talking about it. That made her create a publishing house focused on spirituality when it was considered too alternative. That made her teach self-love in a society that valued self-criticism. Louise Hay always said, "The rarest courage is the courage to be a pioneer, to go where no one has gone before, to do what no one has done before, to be who no one has been before." And that courage is available to you too. It's not a privilege of special people. It's a birthright of every human being. You were born to be courageous, to create, to lead, to inspire, to transform the world around you through your courage. Louise Hay discovered that when you live with courage, not only does your life change, the lives of everyone around you change too. Because courage is contagious. When you act with courage, you give permission to other people to be courageous as well. She used to tell the story of a woman who attended one of her lectures and decided to leave an abusive marriage that had lasted 20 years. This woman not only transformed her own life, but inspired her teenage daughter to also have the courage to report bullying at school. The daughter inspired other girls to be courageous. And so the courage of one person spread like ripples in a lake. Your courage isn't just about you, Louise Hay said. It's about all the people who are waiting for someone to go first, who are waiting to see that it's possible. You can be that person who goes first. Louise Hay lived this exactly. She was a pioneer in talking about self-healing when doctors said it was impossible. She was a pioneer in teaching self-love when psychology focused on problems. She was a pioneer in connecting emotions with physical illnesses when it was considered absurd. And because of her courage, millions of people around the world found the courage to heal, to love themselves, to transform. Her individual courage multiplied into collective courage. That's what happens when you decide to stop living in fear. You not only liberate yourself, you liberate all the people who will cross your path. You become a force of liberation in the world. Louise Hay always ended her lectures on courage with a phrase that changed my life. You have two choices. You can live a small life, controlled by fear, and die wondering what could have been. Or you can live a big life, driven by courage, and die knowing you gave it your all. The choice is yours. You can continue to be a hostage to your fears, living a limited life, wasting your potential. Or you can apply what you've learned today and start living with the absolute courage that has always existed within you. Louise Hay proved that anyone can transform from fearful to courageous. No matter your age, your past, your current limitations. What matters is your decision to stop feeding the fear and start exercising courage. The technique I've taught you today isn't theory. It's proven personal transformation technology. Louise Hay used it to cure terminal cancer, build a publishing empire, impact millions of lives around the world. And she left this legacy for you. Your journey of absolute courage begins now. You no longer need to be a prisoner of your own fears. You have the keys to freedom. You have the map to get out of the mental prison where you may have lived for years. If this message reached you today, it wasn't a coincidence. It's because you were ready to awaken the courage that has always existed within you, to become the fearless woman you always had the potential to be. Louise Hay left a final phrase that I want to share with you. Fear is a lie disguised as protection. Courage is truth disguised as risk. Always choose the truth, even when it scares you, because on the other side of fear is the life you came to live. Your courageous life is waiting for you. Don't let it wait any longer. The world needs your courage. You need your own courage. And your courage needs you to manifest. If you felt that this message spoke directly to your soul, if you recognize that this is exactly what you needed to hear today, don't let this transformation stop here. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, because you deserve to have access to more content that will continue to fuel your journey of courage and transformation. Your new courageous life begins. Now, Louise Hay would be proud of you.